Welcome to Kingdom Mothers Rise Up, where I encourage and equip you to heal your heart and renew your mind so you can live the fully abundant life Jesus promised you. Let's go. It's time to move.
The Lord has been talking to me about using what's in your hand. And I was in a place I think I've been in a place for a long time, and trying to build a coaching business, trying to get my message out because I know that women need community. They need support in being mothers, whether they have their own children or they're just have that heart to mother other women in knowing the Lord and knowing who they are and the skills that they need to be successful in life, just that mother's heart to nurture and train and bring up. And so I easily can get in the trap of, they call it this shiny object syndrome or whatever, of looking for something different. Like there's got to be some different key, some different tool, some different strategy, whatever it is that's going to make the difference. And the Lord was like, no, use what's in your hand. What do you already have? And then he started bringing up the story of David. And so I want to kind of run through that. We're going to focus on when he went against Goliath, but I want to lay kind of some groundwork for that first. So Israel had their first king, King Saul, and I don't really think he'd been king that long before he kind of started to trust in his own strength instead of trust in the Lord's leading. And so God told the prophet Samuel, I'm done with Saul. I want you to go anoint a new king. And Samuel wasn't real excited about that. It's like Saul's not going to think that's cool. But he did it. And so he goes to Jesse in Bethlehem. That's where God told him to go, and tells Jesse, bring all your sons to this sacrifice. And so Jesse brings all his sons, and Samuel does the sacrifice, and then is like looking down the line at each of Jesse's sons thinking, oh, this must be the one. This must be the one. And God's like, no, no, no. And he gets through all of the sons that are there. And he's like, okay, Jesse, are you sure this is all your kids? And Jesse's like, oh, well, there's the youngest. He's out watching sheep. And Samuel's like, well, go get him. And so, we're not proceeding with this until he comes. And so David comes, and God says, yes, he's the one. So God anoints him king. And then he goes back to tending the sheep. And that's part of what I'll talk about in a different message, about just because you have the promise doesn't mean you're ready for it. Doesn't mean it's going to happen now. So David is anointed king, and he's sent back to watch the sheep. And then he's also called to go and serve Saul, and he serves Saul as his armor bearer for a while. He serves Saul that when he gets in his moods of darkness and depression or whatever he was struggling with, that David would play the harp for him, and that would encourage him and lift his spirit. And after a time of that, he goes back to taking care of his father's sheep. And he's anointed king. And here he's serving the king that God has said is no more. And then he, just go back to the sheep. And so out in his time with the sheep, he learns the Lord's voice. Like he builds his relationship with the Lord. There are so many of the Psalms that were written by David in those times out in the fields, just him and the Lord and a bunch of dumb sheep. And there was time that a lion came, and he was able to attack the lion and get the sheep back that the lion had stole. And the same with a bear, and able to kill the lion and kill the bear. And he would have had lots of time out there to practice with his sling. That's what boys do when they sit out, like, oh, I'm going to see if I can hit that rock or hit that tree or take that flower off its stem with this rock. And so he had lots of time to do that while he's out there with the sheep. And then Israel is fighting the Philistines, and they're kind of gridlocked in this valley. And his three oldest brothers had gone to serve in Saul's army. And his father sends him with some lunch, like, take your brothers some food. They're out there at this battle. And so David does. He leaves the sheep with somebody else to watch him. And he shows up and he sees the Philistine army on one side of the valley and the Israel army on the other side of the valley. And he shows up in time to hear Goliath talking about how great he is and all the horrible things he's going to do to Israel. And David's like, this isn't okay. Like, why isn't somebody fighting him? And it's interesting that the soldiers tell him, like, here's the rewards for the person that goes and takes him out. But they're obviously not interested themselves in going and taking him out. And David's oldest brother hears that David's talking to the men about Goliath and about fighting him, and is like, who do you think you are? Like, why are you even here? You don't belong here. And how dare you talk about fighting this enemy? Like, you don't even belong here. But David ignores him. And in the verse, it says that, like, what his brother was doing, like, he was doing again. Like, so this was a normal thing for the older brothers, to look down on David and tell him how worthless he was and how incapable he was. And probably because of all of his time out with the Lord, like, he didn't care. It didn't matter what they thought of him. So he ends up before the king, like, I'll go fight this guy. And the king is like, no, can't let you do that. You're just a kid. You're not equipped. Like, this guy has been a soldier longer than you've been alive. Like, you can't go fight him. And David's like, I've killed the lion. I've killed the bear. He's defying my God. I can do this because God wants him taken out, so I can do it. So the king's like, okay, well then put on my armor, put on my stuff. Like, here's the sword and the helmet and the breastplate and all this stuff. And David puts it on. And, we don't really know. Did he think that was a good idea? Was he just doing it because, well, the king said so? I kind of have to do what the king says. Or, was he just like, no, the whole way through or whatever? But once he gets it on, he's like, this isn't going to work, Saul. Like, it's not going to work. I'm not trained in this. I'm not used to this. Going into battle with this is not going to be a good idea. Because he had that confidence to know what he had. He had the faithfulness of the Lord to take out a lion and take out a bear. He had the skill with his sling and a stone. And he knew that. And he's like, that's all I need. Like, I am on God's side. I am fighting his battle that I know he wants to win. And I know, like, if he's helped me save a sheep, then he can help me save the nation that I'm anointed to be king of, and but he doesn't bring any of that up. I mean, can you imagine throwing that in Saul's face right then? Like, I'll go take care of this because I'm the one that's supposed to be king anyway. Totally doesn't do that, but it's just like, this is what the Lord has given me, and I know it will be effective. And so he goes against Goliath, and Goliath is literally a giant of a man, trained in battle. Like I said, had been a warrior since before David was born. But he was trained in one-to-one combat. And David knew, like, no, I can't go up there and sword fight him. But with my sling, I don't have to get close to him. And he's an enemy of he's defying God. I don't have to play by his rules. And so he uses what's in his hand. He uses his sling and picks up the stones and takes out Goliath. And so, like, bringing that to, like, okay, it's a cool story. What does it have to do with my life? Well, if you're in a place where you feel like God is calling you to something, it could be a business, it could be starting a small group, it could be reaching out to a neighbor, it could be doing devotions with your kids, inviting them into hearing the Lord and getting to know him in that way. And maybe it feels super intimidating. I'm not equipped for this. I don't know how to do it. The experts say I need to do it this way, and I just don't know if I can do that. What's in your hand? What do you already know? As David already knew, the Lord was against the Philistines and did not want them oppressing his people. He already knew that the Lord had equipped him to take out the lion and the bear. He already knew the Lord as his shepherd and his protector. He knew how to use a sling. He knew the power of the sling. I read a book that talked about it being kind of like a bullet, like with the speed at which and the size and everything. Like it was kind of would have been equivalent to a sniper in their day with their weapons and whatever. Would be like a sniper now. Like you can stay back and be very effective if you're good. So David, kind of like a sniper, but he hadn't been trained in that other than he had lots of time out with the sheep to practice. And so looking in my own life, and maybe you can look like maybe you're in the season where you're out with the sheep right now, and it all seems kind of pointless and it all seems kind of mundane and boring. And you feel this call to do bigger things. You know, there's bigger things out there, but like, here I am with the kids and the laundry and the messes that never end. So maybe you're in that season where you're out with the sheep, but you've been anointed to something else. It's a season of preparing. It's a season to get to know the Lord. And it's a season that maybe you can't see it now, but in the future, you will see, oh, that was preparing me. So when my oldest kids were little, always wanting like that friendship relationship with the Lord and not knowing how to get it. And we had a speaker come to our church that talked about just spending time in God's presence, and he called it soaking. And I was like, okay, I don't really get it, but it makes sense to me. So we're going to do it. And so I did it with my kids, and we did it for a long time. And it took me a long time to learn to quiet my thoughts and to understand what feelings and thoughts were from the Lord and what thoughts and feelings were just me. But because I spent that time with the kids interrupting and not knowing if they were being serious or being goofy and all the different things, pardon me, that laid the foundation for what I do now. I teach women to hear the voice of the Lord. And I can teach you to teach your kids because like I learned all this stuff teaching my kids. So like that was a preparation that in that season, did it look like it was producing anything? Did it feel like it was going to be a big deal? No, it was just what I needed to do to be the mom that I felt called to be. And going through childhood emotional neglect recovery, like I was doing that for me and I was doing it for my kids because I didn't want them to grow up with the same dysfunction that I had. That also has laid a foundation for what I do now. Because I see childhood emotional neglect so many places, way too many women, and way too often it's reinforced by messages from the church and from the pulpit. And that's so hard to see. But so I can look back at that season with littles and you're just busy and tired and wondering if you're doing it enough and how much you're messing your kids up and all of that stuff. But to see in a different season, that was the Lord preparing me. It was him teaching me to know him and depend on him for the things in the next season, for the things that you're moving towards your calling and what he's what he's anointed you for. What, sweetie?
Can I play just one game on the tablet?
Not right now. So I think that was it interrupted. So look at what's in your hand. What has the Lord already trained you in? What has he already equipped you with? Where do you know him? And our life doesn't fit into neat boxes and seasons. So there might be some areas of your life where you're like out with the sheep. And then there's other areas of your life where you're more like operating in that anointing, and you can see the things he's done in the past and how that's equipped you for your present season. So I just want to encourage you in that the Lord has equipped you, and he is equipping you for what he's called you to. And just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean you're messing it up. It doesn't mean that he changed his mind. It's just not the season yet. Just bless you with that and encourage you with that.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Kingdom Mothers Rise Up podcast. I'm blessed to have you here. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can join us in the Kingdom Mothers Rise Up Facebook community. When you're ready for more support, I have the Heart Doodling with Jesus monthly membership, periodic group coaching, and one-on-one personalized coaching as well. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.